Welcome back, everybody. My name is All Fun and Games. I stream every day here on Twitch TV, and I also make fun little videos here on YouTube. Today, I'm going to be showcasing a way for fighting off frog rain. Now, of course, in case you just have never done it before, this is something that obviously will take a long time to do, and that's why you see me in creative mode just massively spamming these tooth traps. Plus, I also have a few other things in my inventory that I want to showcase. I've been asked recently while playing Don't Starve Together, how do you handle frog rain, and I'm about to showcase how to do that. First, I want to drop off these Bramble husks, which are going to become with option number 2, potentially for the video right after this one. But for the sake of frog rain, let's get crazy. Alright, first things first, let's give ourselves none other than a nice little trusty little backpack, which I guess I could probably use like piggyback if I really wanted to. Keep grabbing all this thing. Now, luckily, I am using Action Q Reborn, which lets me grab all these items and place them down individually as well in a nice little pattern. Now, it is better if you obviously place them down yourself and not use a mod, because sometimes even Action Q Reborn will place items, yes, very far apart from each other, and we don't want to have that. So, if that ends up happening, just fill in the gaps as close as you can, and you want them to be very, very close, but not overlapping, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. So, when you officially finish making this sort of setup, you want to make sure that it's pretty condensed, or at least somewhat condensed. And if you've watched my year in Don't Starve Together full year tutorial explaining how to survive a year in DST, I showcase one of these tooth traps near the very end of it, especially when it comes down to helping killing certain bosses. Now, it's not foolproof for bosses, but it is good against for using things like hound waves and whatever else. So, if you have tooth traps, well, how the heck do you get tooth traps? First of all, well, obviously, when you kill hounds, you get teeth. And sometimes just throughout the world, from exploring in different areas and biomes, you also get teeth. Then from the teeth, you go into your crafting menu. Whoops, I pressed the wrong thing. You go into your crafting menu and you type in tooth, and then it's going to show up with a tooth trap. Requires 1 log, 1 rope, and 1 hound's tooth. Once you do that, you're able to make yourself what you see right here. This thing gets a few uses, about 10 or so, and then pretty much from there, you're gonna need to replace it. You can't repair it or anything like that. But why is this good for frog rain? Okay, so let's just start with a small little version right here. And let's just imagine that we have a bunch of frogs that are starting to spawn in. Let's just spawn in some frogs, okay? And now keep in mind, this is obviously better if it is actually frog rain, but for the sake of the video, it doesn't really matter. And let's do 20 frogs. Okay, so we got 20 little frogs, and they're all just hopping around having a fun little time. Now, naturally, they're going to eventually fall on this thing and eventually die anyways, which is not going to actually trigger me as being the enemy. They're just going to naturally attack the tooth traps, and time goes on and blah, 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 blah. More frogs start to fall from the skies. Of course, let's just imagine, because we all know that frog rain usually goes on for quite some time. You can actually go through the step number 2, which is taking the frogs and actually pulling them to the tooth traps. This is something to be very, very cautious about. What I usually recommend doing is making sure that you have a little bit of armor and maybe give yourself a spear. That way you can attack a little bit faster than if you're using anything else. When you jump up to the frogs, make sure that you've reset all the tooth traps so they are ready to go and kill some frogs. They will kill frogs pretty quickly, as they do a decent amount of damage. 1 or 2 will obviously trigger in order to actually kill a frog, so just be a little bit cautious with that. And here we go. So if you have a bunch of frogs running around, hit 1 frog, wait for them to all attack you, and then run them through the tooth traps. Basically do this continuously until there's no more frogs left. And of course, I'm playing as Warthog, so I'm going to overload, but that's okay. I don't really care about that right now. And then the more you do this, the better. Now, keep in mind, this tooth trap setup is really, really good, because down the road, you can obviously use it for other things like hounds. Yes, I've showcased in another video for sure. So tooth traps are very, very good. They're good to use for multiple different reasons, but for frogs, it does work very, very well. So there you go. If you have some tooth traps, if you've killed some hounds, start your collection and make it bigger as time goes on. Don't worry, when frog rain does happen, I know it's very annoying, but there is ways around it, and this is definitely one of the best ones. There is also another routine that I like to use when it comes to actually getting yourself attacked by a bunch of frogs, and that is what you see right here. So let's go ahead and showcase that real quick before we end this video. Alright, so let's just imagine the same thing happens, and all we have inside the server with us is a trusty little wormwood. Well, if we beg hard enough, wormwood might rip off a few of their arms and give us a little tiny bramble husk. When we have this, we're basically wearing what you just seen. A ton of little tooth traps. That's right. Our armor is basically a tooth trap. What I would suggest doing from there too, if you have more than one, I would suggest wearing more than one depending on how many frogs you have attacking. I think the calculations when I've done it before, especially when I'm playing War Talks, works out really well because I can heal myself as I'm getting attacked. But it ends up working out where, from what I remember, I think 22 frogs or something can attack you before killing the armor. I think that's probably about right. I don't know. I did it a few times and it's hard to calculate just because how fast the frogs happen to attack you. They do 10 damage when they attack you. Your Bramble, I for some reason I think it was 22. But anyways, let's go ahead and test her out. So I'm just going to stand here and do absolutely nothing. Now mind you, I do have a battle helm on as well. I'm just not going to attack at all. I'm going to be completely passive mode. Okay, my numbers of 22 was completely wrong as I spawned in around 40 or so. Now some frogs are going to be left near the end because they actually have a decent amount of range damage on them with their tongues. But as you can see, I've completely annihilated the bunch of frogs that are actually here, and I still have my Bramble husks on. Now I might have used one or two. I didn't actually see if they diminished or not, but you get the idea as to why Bramble husks are so awesome. Now, the problem with Bramble Husk, why I didn't show it first, and I showcased tooth traps originally, because obviously tooth traps are easy to get and everybody can get them. Bramble Husks are not the same situation. When you have a Bramble Husk, unfortunately, it's going to take some time to actually get it, especially if you're not having a wormwood in the server. You might have to convince a friend to join in, or maybe you have to actually wait until you can despawn your character and spawn in as a wormwood. But there you go. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.